Yeah, mine might.
Hello and welcome to everyone who is joining us. It is really wonderful to have you with us this evening, or perhaps this morning, depending on where in the world you are joining from. On that note, do feel free to say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. We are just going to give it a few minutes to let people into the Zoom. But as you can see, you have arrived in the right place, I hope. We are here for the Breaking the Pattern event, which is the first for the fashion interest group. And we'll be doing some introductions very shortly. But in the meantime, just, yeah, settle in and say hello in the chat. It'd be lovely to see who we have with us. Okay, wonderful. As you would have seen as well when you joined the Zoom today, that we are recording the session. So just keep that in mind. If you would like to turn your camera off because it's recorded, that's okay. Just, yeah, an awareness that it is being recorded so we can share it with anyone who can't make it live. Okay, it's fantastic seeing more people join us. Welcome to those who are just entering the room now. We'll just give it one more moment and we will make a start. Hey, wonderful. It's a very global audience this evening. So thank you all for sharing where you're joining from. It's really interesting to see. Okay, I think I am going to pass over to Azinna. Thank you so much for facilitating this event for us. I'm really excited and it's lovely to see so many people joining us. Over to you.
Great. Welcome and good evening, everyone. Thanks again for being here with us this evening. So, let me introduce myself more fully. My name is Esmond Belladog. I'm a fashion anthropologist, a fashion specialist author, academic, and your moderator this evening. So, the topic for this inaugural lecture for the Cutting Edge Lecture Series is Breaking the Pattern, Confronting Barriers in Fashion's Future. We have pioneering voices of Nazma Akter, Dr. Sass Brown, and Orsola de Castro here with us this evening to confront the structures that limit progress and to imagine what comes next. So let's get started. Our first speaker, Nazma Akter, Labour rights activist and founder of Awaj Foundation. Over to you, Nazma. You have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, and good evening and late night. It's 11 o'clock my country. So thank you very much for inviting this event, cutting. So, because the fast fashion, if we are talking about the issues, I think, first of all, fast fashion is like the audience and the other speaker, you are from the receiving country as a consumer and also you are activist. And my country, we are the production country and we are the exploiter. And this is like a imperial system and colonialization system and the fast fashion, it's a women's job and women's are working. So everybody is undermining the women's is not a respectful and not respectful job. So that's why when the people are coming to my country for the business, mostly they come to country like Bangladesh for the cheap labor and low wages market where more exploitation, more harassment and abuse, including sexual harassment is because of the, when you are treated as a human being, as a cheap labor, And also Bangladesh is like a patriotic society. South Asia is very typical traditional country, region, and women should be like a good mother, good sister-in-law, daughter-in-law. Every aspect you need to be good. Otherwise, you cannot the good woman. And you should look like this way. You cannot look like this and that and independent like Europe and America. These women are coming from the rural migration and rural area to the urban economic, and they are producing fast fashion like Primark, George, Sainsbury, New Look, as well as M&S. And they are coming to my country, again, the cheap labor, and there is no respect. The workers are working, mostly women worker, and also very young and youth are working, and their important times is giving. And historical also, this textile industry and textile is all over the world. The women are making the goods and they're selling, because this kind of industry used to be Europe, America, and it came to Africa, Asia, and other country. But the same nature of job, same nature of attitude, same nature of behavior and exploitation. The women's has no crash facility. The women's are not getting a proper wages. Women after 40 years, they become a voluntarily retired because long working hour, no food, no resting, not enough drinking water, and all malnutrition related, all kind of disease are suffer by the fast fashion. Even their children are separate from the mother. They're living in the countryside, the breastfeeding rights and mental and physical growth also challenging for the women. So this is not only the Bangladesh issue, it's a global corruption, and globally it's happened, and globally it's going on. So therefore, the women we try to empower them and the leadership position. But many cases when the workers are raised their voice, especially women, because women need to be in South Asia, the good girls and good women. But when you raise your voice, when you are screaming, when you are shouting, then you are the bad girl. So if women wanted to be leadership position, but this society, this system is when said that she's a bad girl, her character is very bad, then you are step forward 5 step, but then you need to go back like 10 steps. So this is the reality we go. And when the women are raised their voice, when they are talking about the issues, even they are talking about their health, because they cannot talk about their menstrual health, even many sexual health, because it's a social taboo, and also society has a lot of barrier. And the workplace also, the men are in the leadership, women are in the labor force. So these kind of things we need to be think about this. Even the automation, the artificial intellectual, it's so expensive, and the company are so care. But the cheap labor, women, they don't care. But the human has no value, and women doesn't have, because Bangladesh is a manufacturing hub. We have a lot of young people, and they made clothes, and we made your clothes, but we don't have living wage. We don't have the safe working condition. We don't have the freedom of association and collective bargaining rights. We don't have social protection system, and our children are separate from us. And so even we cannot raise our voice. If we raise our voice, we demand something, we are blacklisted. We cannot get the job. We cannot do things, legal charges. Even during the West campaign in 2023, 4 workers was shooted by the police and killed. There is also female workers, and number of workers was in the prison. There were legal charges, but the company, the brand, like Rana Plaza happened, and many things they are doing illegally, even they are not paying on time. Nobody is going to the prison. Nobody has the shooted to the company, the manufacturer. So, this fast fashion, we want this job, but we always in the slavery job. We are always in the bad condition, and the price is not increased and adjusted the price for the wages. So, this kind of things is fast fashion, because I know the many now people are, we are talking about the CSTPLD, the MHRD, and British slavery law, so many things going on at this moment. But what is the impact for the workers? What is the benefit for the production country? My country people are giving so much effort, so much value, and we are giving our blood and sweat. And sometimes, the European American get the 70% discount, buy one, get one free. Nothing is free, nothing is discount in this country. Somebody has, in this world, somebody has to pay for that. That is the workers, that is the women's. And the Rana Plaza, Tajrin, the accident, it's happened because people are not respect the workers, and people are not respect the female workers. So these kind of things, the society, the world is not equal power. There is no systemic change. We are talking so much about the living wage, about the freedom of association and the social protection, climate issue, so many things, but how much? Because now in Bangladesh, so hot, many workers are ill, they are going to absent, and they need to buy the medicine, they need to cannot do the production. That's why there are all kind of harassment they are facing. Nobody's care about this, because this worker is very important. The workers, if they cannot work, this machine only, auto machine cannot run, because somebody has to running this machine, but the workers has no value. And a lot of young girls are working, and their important life, they are sacrificed for the fast fashion, but the fast fashion never doing anything, and they always cut and undermining the women workers. So therefore, we are here, and many people are also here, and different part of the world. So the women, how do we protect them? How do we save them? That's why the women need to be unionized. We need to be women strong negotiation power, because we are fighting for the West so many years, but the brand never take the responsibility. My country government, they are not change the legislation. The manufacturer, they want to cheap price more labor force, but they don't want to the expensive workers and make good things. And we are producing very basic and ordinary product, and very rare we do the high expensive things. So even the fast fashion has a lot of exploitation. Even the high luxury fashion also a lot of embroidery, hand stitch, those also home-based workers, informal economy, precarious work. These things are increases now. The platform worker, nowadays the workers supposed to be a job, appointment letter, but now there is no job contract. Every day the precarious work is increasing. Workers are migration from my country to different country, because the climate change. The workers are in the village or where they live. Sometimes it's a heat, the desert, sometimes the flooding. They took their land and everything, and also too much foggy, and the winter, it's also not working properly for then they back to come here, or they go to Middle East or somewhere in the garments industry or fast fashion. But there is also no equal wages, no equal payment. 10 to 12 hours, 14 hours day they are working, 7 days a week. Maternity protection is absent. So many things going on. So that's why we are working and try to strengthen women workers to leadership and factory level union, and where the female are lead and female are working on it. and female how to negotiation and how to bargaining. So we have a number of collective bargaining, and our foundation was helping. So if you like to know, and I can share also with you if you are share with the email or something, because we try to gender sensitive CBA. We try to gender related all kind of issue, and also women lead and union and women, because this is also another big problem in my region and the rest of the world. The men are in the union leader, women like a second tier member or leadership, because they don't have the mainstream leadership. But in our organization, we have, after Rana Plaza, 84 union. So that union, most of the union is like a 80% female lead organ, we try. And also all CBA, we took a gender sensitive, and also climate change and gender diversify, those kind of we included, and we are happy to share with you. Because, and just transaction, if we wanted to really change the society, because the without workers, and that also gender diversify, because it's very difficult to say in my country LGBTQ or transgender kind of things, because people are not respect. So that's why also it is very difficult. And also we talk about the just transaction. Even there is a lot of green factory in my country, the highest number, but the workers' life is not green. The workers are not happy with this area, and workers are not getting that kind of green. Maybe the solar panel, they put some green tree or ventilation kind of things are nice. But what does it mean, the green factory? Only the environment, only the lighting, or saving the rainwater? Or the workers should get the decent wages, decent working condition, respectful freedom of association. So, people always misguided and misinterpreted, and they are not matching with the workers' rights and workers' well-being. So these kind of challenges we're facing, and also we are talking about the CSDDD, mandatory human rights due diligence. Also, we are talking different act and different type of laws in different country. But there is also a lot of risks if the CSDDD started work in 2027, because if how much yearly turnover, how many employee has, so many things happen. But in Bangladesh, many outsourcing, subcontracting, small factory also work. If they are not under those type of under the CSDDD on mandatory due diligence, then our worker will be more vulnerable. Our worker will be more exploitation. So we need to think the small factory or big factory, the European, they are protecting their company. I don't think they are protecting our workers. America, they don't believe the union rights, and they are not signing the accord. And that kind of things we need to work, and our systemic change is very important. Power should be balanced. It's an imbalance, because the supplier to the brand to the supplier to the workers. But it is not happen, because the brand has so much power. Whatever they wanted to do, that is supplier listening. Whatever they think, even they're thinking that because the supplier is not even scared the god, they scared the brand, because they are giving order and they got money. So this kind of imbalance and society and imbalance things. Even the climate, Bangladesh is a high risk country. We are one of top 10. And all the factory, they destroy our nature, they destroy our forest, they destroy our river, they destroy our hill, everything, and they make industry. But the society, the people we affected, the workers we affected, every rich people, they are using the air condition and lot of things to keep them cool, save them. Those air condition bring the outside good breathing to the inside, and all the bad heat goes to the out. And when people go out, heat like a chili flakes in the body, and it's like a burning the people's life. And lot of coughing, lot of fever, asthmatic, so many disease and so many things going on. So we talking about the fast fashion, and also we talk about the empowerment. We talk so many things, but end of the day, the worker's life and livelihood is very rich. So therefore, myself also the child labor, I know how difficult. I was working in the factory, how difficult with my mother. So, we don't want it to our children. Our next generation will be go for same work and same type of exploitation. The Rana Plaza, when people are doesn't want to buy the clothes, when the people are not doing happy with the Bangladesh, then the accord is started, and accord save people life. And if accord is a remedy for the workers, which is good, the factory level safety, but the workers need to safety in their houses where they live. Their house is very narrow, they don't have sufficient resting time, they working 12 to 14 hours day. So this
Nazma,
kind of things,
Nazma,
yeah, I'm
sorry.
just finished.
Okay,
Yes, this
sorry.
kind of things is need to be take action. So we want the business, but we don't want the slavery. We don't want to charity. We want our dignity, and we want our profit. Anger, hope, action.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nazma. Thank you. Next, we have Dr. Sass Brown, researcher, writer, educator at Kingston University, who'll be sharing her presentation. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it. I'll be relatively brief, but there's a lot to tackle here. Confronting barriers in fashion's future. It's an awfully big question to answer in 15 minutes. And I'm sort of going a bit broad rather than narrow and deep. But we have so many challenges and problems in forging a new and a more sustainable future for fashion. And I don't want to focus just on a litany of problems, although that would be very easy to do. But we already have a litany of and a multitude of solutions that we have to address these many problems. So I'd like to condense this really large, inclusive question into really condense it down to about what I consider, from my personal perspective, as two core challenges. And that is, those two core challenges, nevertheless, have a multitude of different impacts. And I have one overarching issue that connects them both together. So let me just move my slides do not want to move on that way. Give me a second. There we go. So the first major barrier for me has to be consumption. I think it's at the root, the scale of consumption that we have, particularly in the West, is at the root of so many of our problems. We can take that from the over-extraction of raw materials, whether that's oil for synthetics or whether it's industrial scale monocrop farming or overgrazing, all of which leads to a degradation of the environment, biodiversity loss, and species depletion, not to mention pollution overall. So, and that over-extraction of raw materials then goes on to become overproduction. So, and with all of the processes that we put textiles through in the wet processing of textiles, from the cleaning to the softening, the dyeing of the fiber, whether the printing or the finishing, they all take enormous amounts of energy, enormous amounts of water, and use a lot of chemicals. In the mainstream system, there are alternatives to all of this. But by default, that leads to a lot of pollution, whether it's of the air, the water, the soil, or all of that. And that finally leads to enormous amounts of waste, which is exacerbated by fast fashion's microtrends, and ends up being incinerated or in landfill or donated to charity. And when it's donated to charity, then it's shipped off to other regions of the world that have even less ability to recycle those fabrics and garments than we do, and end up polluting beaches, whether they're in Ghana or in deserts in Chile. So the second major issue for me, which is a bit sort of all pervasive, is capitalism. At its root, capitalism is an economic system, and it's an economic system that's designed to support growth and the development of individual wealth. And what that results in is this expansionist mindset as the only measure of success, that expansion is how we value whether we are successful as individuals or as brands or designers. So we have publicly traded companies whose sole responsibility when you're a publicly traded company is return on investment through quarterly returns to your investors. That is your sole responsibility as a publicly traded company, not the environment, not the people that work for you, but return on investment to your investors. And by default, that really necessitates ongoing growth and expansion. So this return on investment results in production methodologies that really focus on faster and cheaper, that ultimately, by default, take advantage of people and planet. They devalue labor, which we've just heard about, whether that labor is farmers that grow the fiber, the spinners, the weavers, the knitters, the garment manufacturers, all of whom are squeezed for better prices and tighter deadlines. So this concept of unlimited growth on a finite planet with finite resources is just, at its core, simply incompatible. And if we go on and sort of dig a little further into the capitalistic mindset, what that has led to is some of the greatest disparities in wealth that we have ever seen. You know, the fact that the top 1% of the world's population holds more wealth than the bottom 95% in combination is insanity. Several of the richest men on the planet have made their billions on the back of those making our textiles and making our clothing. So if we look at, say, Bernard Arnault of LVMH, his net worth at last count was 152 billion US dollars. I mean, that's an inconceivable amount. I'm going to repeat that. 152 billion US dollars of personal wealth for one single human being. That's more than the bottom 12 country listings of gross domestic product. It's more than the bottom 4 countries combined, which is collectively home to nearly 300,000 people. Countries that have some of the poorest people on the planet, there are 3.5 billion people worldwide living in poverty. That means surviving on less than $6.85 US a day, or 2,500 a year. There are another 700 million people, which is almost 9% of the global population, who are living in what's considered extreme poverty. And that means subsisting on less than $2 American and 15 cents a day, or $784 a year. That disparity in wealth is just unconscionable in this day and age. So that sort of brings me to sort of the third major issue, which is the one that connects both of those two, the pillar, if you like, and that's ethics. So if capitalism and consumption are the two pillars of these wicked problems, then ethics is the crossbar that connects them, because businesses decenter ethics in favor of profits. So that lack of ethical, and there's a sort of basic graph, more or less, this is one of the more accepted bases for sustainable development, the 3 pillars. I'm simplifying it slightly. So, but that lack of ethical consideration starts right from the very start of fashion's value chain. So, and that presents its own set of problems. So those challenges start right from design inspiration, from a fashion's value chain and the stages that we go through to produce our garments and our textiles, which too often ends up co-opting other cultural traditions and results in cultural appropriation, which is rarely about consideration or recompense or credit for the communities of craft who developed, but it doesn't have to be that way. You know, students are still too often taught to sketch to this ludicrous 9.5 head scale of fashion illustration. That's the measure that we use when we talk about fashion illustration. If the head was a measurement, it would fit 9.5 times into that illustration proportion. And so that's something that mimics the size 4 model, 5'8" or taller, which the rest of us on the planet spend, you know, most of our lifetime trying to attain or failing to attain, because it's a physical impossibility for most of us. The average Brit is a size 16 and 5 foot high, 5 foot 5 inches in height. Clearly, they are never going to attain a size 4 or a 5'8". Most of us aren't. Add to that this singular Eurocentric standard of beauty that is consolidated through advertising, through celebrity and youth culture. It wreaks absolute havoc on women and girls' self-esteem and well-being. We have 10% of the female population in the UK and 15% of the female population in the US that suffer from an eating disorder by the age of 17. So we have a multitude of issues, and I know that that can feel really overwhelming. And it requires a multitude of responses, which we absolutely need to affect meaningful change. Part of the reason we're here is because we have considered the system of fashion a single system that's supposed to work for everybody, and clearly it does not. So we need many responses to affect meaningful change. But this overwhelming sort of level of problems that we have, it's just too much for any individual or any business really to grapple with in its totality. But it does require each and every one of us to tackle in part, I think. And I believe that resolving these issues requires a massive culture shift in the West to our value system. But we have all of the tools to affect meaningful change. So if we look at consumption, it's a very personal issue. Probably, you know, we as individuals can resolve to make more considered purchases of items that are an investment, that we know we will want to hold on to forever, that we can choose to support designers in a local economy, or purchase from sustainable designers, or buy vintage, upcycle, free cycle, recycle, mend, repair, you know, alter our clothing. There are so many conscious options. As a designer, we can challenge that status quo. We can design for more diverse audiences, supporting more diverse representations of beauty that are inclusive by design. We can choose to work with more sustainable materials and processes. We can use zero waste design methodologies. We can pay a proper living wage to make our products. We can produce on order to eliminate overproduction. We can divest from microtrends and seasonal drops. We can honor and partner artisans to help sustain tradition. And we can develop take-back programs. The opportunities for us to affect change on an individual, whether a business or a personal level, are absolutely endless if we use fashion and design as a problem-solving tool instead, as a response to these problems, instead of a tool to just produce more stuff. So what I want to do is just finish off with some positive examples to those problems. And this is, at the beginning, this is student work from my program at Kingston. So that's an MA on sustainable fashion business and practices that I wrote for Kingston University. And through that program, students are challenged to develop tangible and implementable interventions and solutions to fashion's problem. So, and students are by definition part of the future of fashion. So this is from a module where students participate in a knowledge exchange with artisan communities in the Global South. So we partner through the International Folk Art Market in Santa Fe, which is the single largest gathering of master craftspeople anywhere in the world. It happens once a year in Santa Fe, with hundreds and hundreds of different master craftspeople that cover all sorts of ranges of different traditional crafts, presenting their work, selling their work. In many cases, that market sustains artisans and entire villages of artisans for a whole year, from a 2.5-day event that they put on there. It attracts people from all over the world. So we work with IFAM to partner with artisans that are either showcasing in the exhibit or have in the past or who have applied to. And the students collaborate to help support and sustain those artisans. IFAM, or International Folk Art, is a not-for-profit. So all of their profits go directly back to the artisans themselves. And we have a non-fiscal agreement with them. So students, as I said, collaborate to help support the artisans themselves. So what we do is we ship in product from all of the different artisans. And the students start by building a photographic database of quality lifestyle photographs of the artisan products that we shipped in. So from that, they can build websites, social media feeds, e-commerce sites, catalogs, any and all sorts of different types of promotional collateral to support the artisans, depending upon what their needs are. This is based on the artisan needs, not from our perspective, what we perceive they need, but from ongoing collaboration and communication with the artisans themselves. Students also develop business and brand guidelines. Again, it depends upon what the needs of that particular community is. So this is an example of one student team from last year, and they worked with a community of weavers in Ethiopia called Shemena. And these are just some of the photographic images that they took to build a website and social media feed. These have been really, really rewarding collaborations with the vast majority, if not all, of the work that the students develop implemented immediately by the artisans themselves. So in this case, this community used these photos to print. We got print-ready artwork for them to print up postcards for the next IFAM that they were participating in, with QR codes that took them right to the website that the students had helped build. And so it's a really incredible project. This is another example from the same module, but a very different example and from the previous year. And this is a community that the students were working with, which was an embroidery atelier in India. And so you can see the photographs here of these really incredible macro photography that show the beauty of the techniques that the atelier produced. They didn't produce garments, they didn't produce finished items. They produced the embroideries, so they helped tell those stories. They built a catalogue, social media feed, website. An exquisite job that they did to promote and showcase the work that the artisans were doing in a way that honoured their traditions, the people, the histories, the meanings, etc.
Sarah, sorry, Sass. I don't know how many more slides you have, because we've
not nearly there, because I know.
Sorry, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not quite at 15 minutes, but I'm gonna move along. So this is another one. This is an example of student work, which was from a different module. This was documenting the wool supply chain in the UK, because we have a massive problem with the loss of this incredible fiber that doesn't have very many outlets, because we import all of the wool from Australia and New Zealand. So beautiful documentation looking into that supply chain. This was a documentary that another student did, Frida Lidbom, on Ghanaian creative responses to the 50 million US used garments that we ship to them every single week. So, and the photo in the background for the film that she produced is she directed with a Ghanaian upcycling designer, a photographer and stylist, and it was photographed on the beach in Accra, and you can see all of the waste behind her. So I'll finish up with just a very few local professional examples. So nothing to do with our program, but just businesses that have tackled some of these issues and done a fantastic job. So this is Justine Aldersley Williams of North England Fibre Shed, who produced, and she's wearing them in the photo, the first pair of indigo linen jeans that have been homegrown, processed, hand spun, naturally dyed, and woven and sewn in the UK for over 120 years. This is London upcycling designer Michelle Lowholder. This is an image just recently published on the cover of Dazed magazine's celebration issues. And this is made from recycled nitrous oxide canisters from the streets of Tower Hamlets.
And last but not least, it's Elvis and Cressy, who are also based in the UK, and they work with upcycled and rescued materials. They're most known for their working with firemen's hoses. And so the work that they do, recycling decommissioned firemen's hoses, has resulted in not one single London fire hose ending up in landfill for over 10 years now. And they donate 50% of their profits go directly to a fireman's charity. So we have the tools to entirely reshape and reimagine our industry if we so choose. So I am done. I will stop sharing my screen. There you go.
Thank you so much. Sorry to have interrupted you.
It's all good.
Okay. Our final speaker for this evening is Orsola Castro, opinion leader in sustainable fashion, mentor, creator, author, co-founder of Fashion Revolution. So Orsola, over to you, please.
Sorry, I have to correct you. Orsola?
Oh.
You're breaking up a little bit.
My name's always because I never. Nice to see you all. How exciting to listen to Nazma and Sass. And I'm going to start with just a brief explanation. I'm a creative by birth, but I am being an activist, founder of Fashion Revolution, which is still to this day one of the biggest, if not the biggest, fashion activism movement in the world. And I left 2 years ago my role as creative director. And interestingly, I have traveled this journey from being immensely creative to having to tackle an industry that is way bigger than anything I could have possibly ever imagined. But just to connect Sass and Nazma, and I think we've seen, a real picture of the industry from the struggles of garment workers in Bangladesh to the excess wealth of people such as Agno. I've actually coined names in case you're interested. People like, I don't know, Musk. I call them billionaires because yes, I agree that they're, they're pretty dangerous for this planet. And I would also like here to mention how important it is that we actually start to think of the whole of mainstream fashion as a problem. It is not just fast fashion. Luxury, in fact, is absolutely culpable of potentially different crimes, but no less cynical. We think that with luxuries prices, their supply chain workers would be fairly retributed, but of course they are not. We think that with all of those margins, they would be able to adopt better materials, but actually a Balenciaga skirt for £1,400 is made of polyester, and Miu Miu is viscose. Neither of those are luxury materials. What is luxury without full traceability of those materials and of the hands that made those quality products? Years ago, I said a quote that went viral, which said, "It isn't enough just looking for quality in the products you buy. You must ensure that there is quality in the lives of the people who make them." But I'm going to do a little detour via greenwashing because in a way, I hate to be the last because I'm a little bit gloomy, guys. I have seen a real plummeting of the work that many of us have done for over 2 decades. I feel that in many cases, the movement around sustainability and sustainable fashion, sustainable thinking, has been emulating precisely the type of systems that we were supposed to antagonize. We've been providing the greenwashers and responding to the greenwashers that have come aplenty from brands, both high street and high end. So often, our legitimately accurate conversation was deliberately distorted. I bring you an example. With Fashion Revolution, we had the Fashion Transparency Index, which still is, a highly important tool to understand and measure the transparency of the world's top 250 brands. And we explained in the publication several times what transparency is. And when H&M for the second year running came top for transparency is not about sustainability, they marketed it as if they were the most sustainable brand in the world. And of course, us being us and me being me, it was like, oh, no. We went very heavily on rectifying the mistake. But this has happened with everything. So my career as a fashion designer was reusing surplus. I started with, cashmere jumpers that had holes. I ended up with T-shirts and housewives' dresses, and then eventually very glamorously sweeping factories' floors. I understand waste. I understand all of the areas at which waste occurs in the supply chain. It has different names. There is excess, there is damage, there's offcuts, there's end of rolls, there's defected, there is dead stock, there is surplus. I mean, and the list goes on. As soon as the big brands have started to realize that there's money to be made by selling old materials, they labeled it all dead stock. So they're providing effectively a material that isn't what it is to a whole bunch of students that genuinely believe that because they're using dead stock, they're putting their creativity to service when they're doing something that every single designer on the planet use what somebody else isn't using. Skills, understanding of the supply chain tiers where waste occurs, and the solutions of how they could be used by lumbering it all in one package. Shein has announced that in order to make their collections upcycled, they will be reusing at enormous scale all of this waste produced in all of these local factories in China. But you see, they can only monopolize it because actually that waste has a very important story, like it did and does in Italy, where production still lives. It feeds local communities. From the factory, it is bought and then sold, depending on to whom, sometimes just housewives to make their party dresses, other batches go to students, to prisons, and so on and so forth. So the gigantification of the industry that we have witnessed is obviously, as Sass explained, the problem. The co-opting of a craft and turning it into a business. The co-opting of a female craft and turning it into a very male business. And this is the one time I will use a military term because I refuse to. But they turn it into a weapon. A weapon that is turned against workers and wearers. Back to luxury. Actually, which luxury brand covers bigger women with bigger sizes? None. I mean, in fact, if anything, in that, the high street has proved to be a little bit more inclusive. I'm a designer. I can tell you that designing for a size 6 is piss easy. It is when it comes to our curves and our substance that a designer is doing their job. Our value, our uniqueness is in our substance, not as close as we can be to our skeleton. So me. I've done some really huge things. I mean, we did silly things like started a hashtag that was followed by millions of people and had a reach of billions. I have really been involved in a movement that helped to place transparency, but also accuracy of language as a central way to communicate. We were not just there to berate the industry, we really had the desire to inform and to present the industry as it is. I mean, as I said, it's huge. I've taken a turn over the last 2 years of my life, a very deliberate turn, leaving this space. And the reality is that for me, this has been absolutely vital to move back to what we can do and to be a witness to what we can do. Because of having done something huge, I'm a firm believer that actually the best things that we can do are small and consistent. So fashion revolution, the hashtag who made my clothes, all of this was accidental. It was huge, but it was accidental. It came at the right time, at the right moment. Its impact was undoubtable. But it was also a moment that reflected the time. That moment will have done a lot, but interestingly, in my experience, we can continue to do more. And I give you an example. After billions invested in chemical recycling, that is fiber to fiber recycling, we still haven't got an accurate, proper way to actually divide these fibers, making recycling really, really challenging. Billions. I've been to countless conferences where CEOs of startups and big brands pouring money onto these enzymes or on these other chemicals, whatever strategy, whatever they had. We're still nowhere near that. And then mending came about. And mending took over. Both from a business perspective, it's getting an awful lot of investment. From a solution perspective, people are really beginning to see that this is something that works. And I don't mean you going onto YouTube and learning how to mend. I mean proper, technologized, modern day mending services when we thought they were dead, when we thought our little seamstress at the corner of our road had no work. And now we're actually beginning to see a surge in the UK. We can think of Sojo, Save Your Wardrobe, the Seam London, but there's in Germany, there's in Italy. They're really sprouting. I was recently quoted talking about mending as a solution for tariffs for none other than Hello Magazine. So it's a wide conversation, which makes me very happy because often we don't look the right places. And I go back to what Sass was saying. So as well as people such as you, people that can afford to buy better, people that enjoy actually saving money and buying less in order to buy something of merit, as Sass was saying. But also from an industrial perspective, we're not doing it the right way. We believe that we will find a solution. I guess it's probably because to a certain extent, we're extremely conscious that we've caused the problem. But we're not going to be the ones to find the solutions. We're still not going to find out how upcycling works because we still talk about upcycling as a potential product. We're not looking where industriousness has created those natural solutions. We should be bringing those practitioners from Cantamanto into the factories in Europe, in China, wherever the factories are. And from their knowledge, understand the scaling up and the industrialization of a technique so precious, such as upcycling, which is a technique, of course, we've redefined it with a new word. But I mean, you know, the second we made something as humans, we knew how to mend it. We knew how to turn it into something else when it stopped working in its original function. We don't have far to go moving backwards to see where technology can lead us forward. I'm not rhetorical. The fashion industry was never clean. It designed itself on the roots of colonialism, on commodification of materials and of people. So no, there is not a moment when, but there have been pockets that we can learn from. And surely the answer is going to be to learn from past practices in order to redefine the future. What I have learned is that after 10 years of solid and very intense activism, in which we all rallied around saying, we will disrupt this industry has not been disrupted. We have. We have been put in a very activist and organizations trying to provide solutions. Small organizations having to solve enormous problems. All of us kept one separate from the other. We should have coalesced. We should have beaten the system at its own game. We can do is we have to construct alternative. Constructing the alternative is scary because it is ultimately the concept of a brand new system, hopefully that will be co-designed by women from the very start, fashion and life, the both. But the power that we have as people, as individuals, from the smallest actions that we can take is profound. For every piece that you mend, for every piece that you keep, you don't just say a throwaway society. You actually slow down the system. Each piece you decide to keep longer, avoid another piece on board. The more we talk about this, the more I reckon in very famous car boot set around here. Up until 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was me, a couple of fashion stylists, and people who really needed to shop at a car boot sale. Now it's queues all around the corner, kind of queues that maybe 3 years ago you'd see outside of H&M for their latest collaboration. Buying hand is not a solution. It's one addiction to because people are still bulk buying. Nevertheless, we imagined bulk buying secondhand 5 years ago, 8 years. And bulk buying secondhand will lead to actually slightly transforming and a bit of customization. People will understand, oh, look, this t-shirt, if I add something, mine, I can resell it on Vinted for more. These guys aren't doing it for sustainability. They're doing it because it reflects their culture. And their cultural value are reflected subsequently, their style. So for me, it's about breeding and growing and committing to being a generation of clothes keepers. And this, in turn, will ensure that brands will focus on clothes that are better made, from people that are better paid and respected, within a balanced use of the resources of an environment that we all share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Orsola. Thank you. Thank you, speakers. Please feel free to add some questions to the chat. I'll open up the Q&A section. We have a few minutes, not that long, really, to be fair. So my question to the panel is, so how do you each balance the tension between working within the system and resisting or remaking it entirely? So Orsola, you've touched on this a bit. So Sass, I wonder if you have any, anything to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree with everything both of our speakers said, and I've known Orsola for a very, very long time at this stage. So we've been both part of this sort of movement for a long time. But for me, I think there's sort of balance or this tension, or for me, the most important thing is to keep a questioning mindset. I find in fashion, particularly someone who came through the educational system, you're taught there's only one way of doing things. There's only one way to achieve success. There's only one way of illustrating. There's only one way of, sketching, all of these things. So for me, it's about questioning every single action and not complying with the way things are done just because that's the way they're done. Because right there is a big problem. It results in sustaining an awful lot of unethical practices. So it's simply keeping a very active questioning mindset about every single thing we do and thinking about, why do we do it? Does it have to be this way? What alternatives are there? How can we be more ethical in our responses to whatever it is we're doing?
Great, thank you. Great answer. Nazma, welcome back. I have a question actually that you might want to elaborate on. So what would a truly equitable relationship between the global North brands and the global South workers or communities look like? You gave us a bit of the background of the lack of women's rights, but what would it look like?
I think, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, yeah.
I think that because global North and global South, because you should not prescribe and you should not do whatever you want. What is needed for the global South, that kind of information and that kind of action is important. because many cases the brand are saying you have to do this kind of things. Even that different trade agreement also not fulfill the purpose of the global south, and always thinking about the profit of global north. So that kind of system we need to change, and we need to be purchasing practice behavior very honest and transparent, because the corruption is a big challenge and nobody is accountable and taking the responsibility in the global north. See the Rana Plaza, over 1,000 workers was killing, thousands of workers were severely injured. No brand who are producing on that factory, no legal charges, no blacklisted, no arrested. But if our worker raise their voice for the wages or try to organize the union, they blacklisted, legal charges, arrested, local gooms harass. So, this kind of things is a very unfair, and also the unfair labor practice is not properly handle, and also grievance mechanism and arbitration system is very bad. So that's why we need the living wages, we need freedom of association, social protection. Climate change is a big challenge for us. That's why the social security and safety and how to protect the child rights. So this kind of legislation and respectful, decent work is important.
Thank you. Important. Thank you. So I have one last question, which I guess I'll ask Orsola. So what advice, Orsola and Sass, what advice would you give to emerging designers, students or organizers who want to break the pattern in their own practice? Orsola, you can take that.
It's very difficult because it's really impossible to. Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult because it's going to be highly individual. Yep. So obviously it's different if you're a designer, if you are wanting to start an organization. So I guess the one thing that I have noticed is that sustainability is, of course, something that you can teach by the book, but you're not going to have an impact unless it comes from an impetus. So certainly when I work with particularly students or very emerging brands, I do say, I'd rather you did much less, but whatever it is that you did was felt. Because from a feeling, you're going to grow. From an obligation, you're going to start to really jump against those limitations. You're going to see them as limitations. If it's an impetus, you're going to feel that it's part of your creativity. I also often say, don't necessarily presume that it's clothes you have to design. It could be a system. Mm-hmm. But the thing I tell absolutely everyone, until I'm blue in the face, is that unfortunately the system that we have right now glorifies and celebrates only those at the top. And this is something that is manifest also in the smaller industry. All students want to be designers. And we haven't got space for that many, as simple as that. So you're going to have to become clever. You're going to have to learn other skills and other techniques, because you're not necessarily going to become the creative director either of your brand or of any other right now. Not unless you make a team. If you make a team of people and each is as invested, you will have however many other people invested in your brand the same way as you are, then maybe you have a chance. But most designers are still fanning their own ego. And that is a problem by design. We need to redesign the way that we approach our designers as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all three speakers. Thanks to the audience too. Lots of insights there and lots of food for thought. So the Cutting Edge Lecture Series returns in October. The topic for discussion will be reimagining fashion, systems, values, and radical futures. So once again, thank you all, and see you on the other side. See you after the summer. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye,
everybody.